there everybody, wanted to take a few minutes and put together a little tutorial on how to run ProPresenter, how to go through and to set up everything before service. Just real quick, what we do here in the sound booth is very important, and preparation is an important part of that, starting in the week before the service leading up to the service. Some of the stuff I wanted to reiterate as we go back into 2022, the time it takes to put into, to go through and to really set up a service and to put some thought and intention into it. We're not just going through a service, going through the motions and putting lyrics up. We're here to help the worship team, but we're here also to build a atmosphere of worship in this place. And we do that through the backgrounds we choose. We do that through the lyrics and paying attention to some of the orphans, the way that they're presented, the way that they're put up, even through the fonts that we use, and all of that comes together as a presentation. What we do is very technical, but it's also very creative, and that creativity is a part of our worship. So I want to walk through setting up ProPresenter, everything that needs to be done before setting up ProPresenter, before the run through for the worship team. When we're coming into a run through before a service, typically in the production world, there's what's called a call time. It's what time the production staff and actors and anybody else, musicians, anything, it needs to be on site, needs to be there and ready to go. Not just there, but there and ready to go. For us, usually for a Sunday morning, for example, our call time for our musicians would be 9:15, 9 o'clock, whatever time they decide to show up to get here to run through the service is their call time. Like I said, typically on a Sunday morning, that's about 9:15. And going through 2022, I would like if whoever is running lyrics, whoever is the operator for that morning, this goes for some of the other areas in the sound booth as well, for us to be here 15 minutes prior to whatever that call time is. So if they're here at 9:15, ready to go through the run through, then we need to be here at 9 o'clock to make sure that we have all this prepped. And most of this stuff that I'm going to show you here, ProPresenter can actually be downloaded, and all of this prep work, or a lot of this prep work, can be done in the week ahead of time. So if you so desire, we can do that. Just talk to me later and we'll get you set up and able to do that. So we'll go ahead and jump in right here. We're going to jump into ProPresenter. The first steps that you do is going to be, of course, turning the computer on and logging in, and then coming down here and opening ProPresenter. So once we're in ProPresenter, once it opens up, you're most likely going to see the playlist from the last service. You're going to see all of the items over here in the left column in the playlist, and you're going to see under playlist, you're going to see the item from the last service. Generally, it's going to just have a date on it. Sometimes it will have a service title on it. Depends to what detail the service has been set up in Planning Center. If you notice and you look here in the corner, right next to the playlist title, is a little icon that has a little P next to it. Now it's kind of small, so it's understandable, but that indicates that it has been pulled from Planning Center. This has been imported and downloaded from Planning Center. If we go in and add a playlist, you see that it's got a different icon here next to it, and that is indicating that it has not been pulled in from Planning Center. Now, in this, you can convert any Planning Center playlist to a standard playlist that will break any links that the playlist has to Planning Center. So what that means, I'll show you the next step. The next step that we do after we open Planning Center is to come in and delete out any of the old playlists. So we actually have a youth rally tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and pull in the So we have a youth rally tonight, so we'll go ahead and walk through pulling in. What's the next step is pulling in the playlist for this service that we are using. We'll come up here to the plus sign and click on that, and we will click on Planning Center Service, which will open where we can select a plan, and we will come through and find whichever service we have. Generally, it's going to be under Special Services, Sunday Morning Service, or Sunday Night Service. Sometimes we will hit some of the other items in this list, but Generally not. So since it's youth rally, we're going to come under special services. We've got January Revival, Section 4 Youth Rally. That's where I was talking about the level of detail that has been put into Planning Center. We have a series title for the January Revival, and then we have an actual plan title, the Section 4 Youth Rally. So we're going to click on that and hit select. And I just hit a key there. So it's going to pull in this January Revival, and it's already going to go through and link everything that pulls in from Planning Center. ProPresenter is going to link everything that it finds a match in its databases, in its libraries. So we've got 2 libraries up here. So it's going to search through all of that, all of its media libraries, all of the media bins and everything else, and find what we have. So if you look here, it's already pulled in the pre-roll. It's got that preloaded in for us. We don't have a countdown or welcome prayer that has pulled in, so we'll need to pull in both of those items. Famous for in the Blessed medley, it did not find anything in there. We'll pull that in. King of Glory came in, looks good. I Thank God pulled in. And then the sermon pulled in. So in order to find an item, you see here it's has nothing under it, just the heading. We'll come up to search, click on search, and then we will search for the title of the song. So Famous For. So this is the one that matches the closest. There's a medley there, so it might be a little different, but we'll go ahead and pull this one in to show you how to pull in a song. So you pretty much just click and drag and pull it up into that item, and it attaches it. So anything that pulls in from Planning Center is going to have an arrangement tied to it. So once we have all of our items pulled into Planning Center, then we're going to want to go in and check the arrangements for everything. Now, everything that pulls into Planning Center is going to have arrangements for it. Sometimes it'll pull in, there'll be no slides in the file. And what that is generally it's pulled in an arrangement from Planning Center that ProPresenter is not recognizing. So in order to fix that, we'll come up to this little icon here in the header, and this is in we'll click on Arrangements, and we'll come over and we can select using this drop-down box, either Master, any of these different arrangements. So looks like there's an arrangement in here that is the medley, so we'll go ahead and select that. So what we'll do if the certain arrangement isn't in there is we want to open Safari and we want to pull up Planning Center. So we'll go to Planning Center here. You can either use your login, or there may be a login already in the computer that you'll want to use. So you'll probably use your login. I'll go ahead and log in with mine. And yours won't look quite like this, but we'll come down to Services. So in Services, we will go to the actual service. Let's go to the plan. We'll go January Revival, Section 4 Youth Rally. We'll click on that item, and then we'll come in and we'll look at the song here. So this song, Famous For Blessed medley, if we look at the arrangement, the linked song, you'll see we've got a sequence here. And the sequence is verse 1, chorus 1, verse 2, chorus 2 times 2, twice. Then the bridge 1, bridge 2, chorus 1 twice, bridge 3 3 times, and then bridge 4 3 times. So the worship leaders are going to set their sequences up in this order. If they're not set up in this order, then we just have to follow the worship leaders. But the worship leaders are going to set their sequences in the orders that they plan to go through in this fashion. So what we'll do is we will take and using this sequence, so what we're going to do is we're going to double check this sequence to this arrangement, and we'll go through each one of them. And we do this because it's going to allow us the maximum maximum planning is going to equal the maximum amount of spontaneity that we can use. If we're going through here and we are on the same page with the worship leader, we know where they're going to go, so that whenever the Spirit hits and we want to go somewhere else with that song, then we as lyric operators can flow with them more easily. If we know where they're planning on going, then we already know and we're on the same page with them, and we can follow them when they go spontaneously. So we'll go ahead and go down to King of Glory. We'll come back to Planning Center and go back to our plan here. And we'll come over to King of Glory. And you can actually access this sequence arrangement info from the song here. So in King of Glory, we'll come up, we've got our arrangements. So in order to create, if there are no arrangements under the master, you'll come down to New Arrangement and you'll type in, so we'll type in Youth Service. And we'll hit OK there. And so it gives us a blank. It gives us a general run through like the master arrangement. Now what we're going to do is we're going to coordinate with the arrangement info and drag and drop each of these items into this bar here, and it will automatically put whatever is tied with that item into our slides here. So we've got verse 1, and then we're going into the pre-chorus, then the chorus 1, and then we're going back into verse 1, so we'll drag that down there. And then we're going into tags. So there's not a tag in this item in Planning Center. So what we'll need to do there is get with the worship leader and figure out what they're calling the tag versus what it's labeled in here. We'll skip the tag for now, and we'll put chorus in here after verse 1. And then we've got bridge 1, and then chorus again, then bridge 2, then chorus again, and then the outro. And we'll use this group that we use for the intro, we'll use it for the outro as well. Now, since there's a bridge 3 in there, I'm assuming that that is what they meant by tag in the Planning Center arrangement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bridge out of there, and I'm going to use this bridge 3, and I'm going to put it right behind this chorus here, and then I missed this pre-chorus. So what I'm doing is I'm just, since there isn't a tag labeled in the ProPresenter item, I'm going to put that bridge 3 in there, and then when we go through the run through, we will already know and we'll be able to identify that wasn't it, or we can go back and change the label in ProPresenter. All right, next step, we are going to update all of the backgrounds. So I want to do this for every service that we do. We have a growing library of motion backgrounds from CMG, or Church Motion Graphics, and I'd like to have fresh backgrounds on every service so that we don't use too many too often. We don't just always assume that the same ones are okay. So anytime you come to the computer and pull in a service, I'd like to use new backgrounds. So what we're going to do is we'll come up to this first item, and we will right click on the slide and come down to remove actions. Now generally we won't have to remove any of these other actions, the audience look or the stage, but I'm going to for this time. Generally you'll look for this background icon that usually is named what the background is. So we'll remove that, and then we're going to come up to media, and we can make this however big or small we want to. And then there's this folder over here under media that shows CMG backgrounds. Now there's a file in here for every month that we have going back to September of 2021. We have elsewhere in the computer a larger catalog of these old backgrounds, but this is how far we've gone back with this current software. So in these, you can click through these different playlists under this folder and see some of the different backgrounds that we have from every month. Now you can mix and match these and find ones that match different colors, different speeds, that type of thing, and find ones that you like and think that fit the song and fit the mood of the service and the theme of the service. So when it comes time that you found the ones you want for the song, what you're gonna do is click on it and just drag it up to this item and drop it. And it'll automatically put it on there, and it'll trigger what it is. So we're going to come up here and remove these actions. So cleaning up the actions and the themes, there are what is called macros in this right-hand column here. On this right-hand column, we can come down and find this macro that's lyrics. What a macro is just a group of actions that are grouped together so that we don't have to have all of these different actions that do different things on the same one. So we'll grab this macro and pull it over up to lyrics, to this intro, and there we have it. There we have the background up and the macro on it as well. So to clean up, all of these look like the themes look good on them. In order to clean up the theme, we have to select all of the slides and then apply the correct theme to them. So how we do that is the easiest way is you can either just drag across. So you can either just drag across and select all of the slides, or what I like to do is another way that's a little bit quicker, but it's also sometimes finicky, is we'll come back up here and we'll go to the master version of the song, master arrangement. And we're going to click over in the edge here, and then we're going to hit Command and A, and it's going to select all of the slides in that song. Now, one important step before we apply the theme is we need to come here to this intro slide and hold down Command again and click that slide, which is going to deselect it from all the other ones. Now we come up to theme and we'll come to POG themes and we'll select this double line bottom. Now we want to make sure that we use this same slide for all of our, or the same theme for all of our songs. It's just going to clean up and make everything a little bit easier to process on the computer as it's sending out that theme to different places, to the front screen or to the live stream. So once we go through the backgrounds and through the macros and actions and through all the themes, then next we're going to move on to our next step. So then we're going to move on to our next step, which is pulling in scriptures. So generally we use the same sermon item for every sermon that we have. And generally you're going to come in here and there's going to be what is left over from the previous sermon that was pulled in. Now, to start out with, we want to find our title slide and our scripture blank and group those together by dragging them next to each other. Then I'm going to use the same method that I used. You can drag and select everything, but I'm going to hold Command and hit A, and then I'm going to come up and hold Command and click on that slide and click on that slide. Now, it's kind of finicky sometimes with this, so you got to be careful with this one. So we'll deselect both of those slides, and then you can either right click and delete, or just hit your delete key and delete out all of those slides from the scripture. So this macro here should have the sermon title macro on it. We want to check and make sure that, and we want to make sure this one has the sermon scripture macro on it as well. Those are important because it tells the computer how to format the scriptures that it's sending to each of the different places that we send it to. Whenever we trigger something on here, it triggers it both on the live stream and on the front screen as well. So once we have the sermon, once we've got this ready to go, we need to pull in both the title slide and the background slide, and we'll walk through that here in a second. And then we need to pull in the scriptures that the speaker is planning on speaking on. So first off, we'll pull in the scriptures. In order to do that, once we've got a clear sermon presentation, come up to Bible, and we'll look up the first scripture. So before we pull up anything in here, we're going to come over to options. What we want to look for on options is we want to check this theme here in the bottom. We want to just look over and make sure all of these items, make sure nothing has changed on those options. We want to make sure that the lower third scripture item is selected. We want to make sure to pay attention as well to the notes of the speaker to see if they have referenced any different titles in their, or any different versions of scripture in their notes. So in order to pull in different versions of scripture, we'll come over here to this drop down box and we can select any version of scripture from this list that's shown here. We'll want to double check to make sure that the items are going, that the scripture, the verse, and the reference are going to the correct places in the slide. So we'll make sure that the verse here is going to verse and the reference is going to the title box labeled reference. So then once we have all that squared away, we've double checked and we just confirmed all that, then we'll search our scripture. You can hit enter here. So once it pulls up with these here, we want to make sure that we have this sermon item selected. And then in order to pull all of these scripture slides into that sermon presentation, we'll come down to Save As in the corner, and then come up to Copy to Selected Presentation. Once we click that copy button, then initially we'll come back out to Show and double check to make sure that this item pulled in correctly here in our backgrounds, or in our items. So then we'll click across, just kind of double check that it's pulling everything in correctly. Appears as though it is. We'll check on the stream as well. Now it's not showing up quite right here because we don't have the sermon scripture macro applied yet. You either have to click first on this scripture blank slide and then click on one of the scriptures for it to pull in correct, for it to show correctly, or you click on this sermon scripture item. So what we'll do as we pull these items in, so later on I'll show you how we can make sure that we don't miss one of those macros coming through. So you'll come up and you'll pull in all of the rest of your scriptures, individual or passages. We'll copy to selected presentation. Once we've got all of the scripture slides in, then we'll come back out to the presentation. So what we want to do here is we want to make sure that all of our macros and our titles are assigned correctly. So what I like to do is I like to come to this title slide and I will copy it. And then I will go at the end of every section of scripture, whether it's a single scripture or multiple slides of scripture, I will come to the end of it here, so Acts 2 and 8, and then I will paste that slide so that I don't have to continually be moving this slide or scroll back up to hit that slide. Next, what I want to do is I want to make sure as I'm going through this process that I grab this sermon scripture macro and put it on the first slide of every sermon scripture, or of every scripture. So I see I missed it up here on Acts 2, so we'll put it up there. What that does is with the title up here on the screen, let's go back to the front projector here. With the title up there, whenever we hit our arrow key or click on this scripture, it automatically goes to the macro, and you can see that it did the same thing for the lower thirds. Now as we go through to the next slide, it stays on that. Whenever we trigger a macro, it doesn't change until we trigger another macro. It will stay with this format until we tell it to trigger something differently. It does that with backgrounds, it does that with foregrounds, and etc. So now we come down, we've read through to Acts 2 and 8, and then we click on this title slide, and you see it goes back because of this macro that is applied up here. And then likewise here through John 1:3, and then we will paste that item back in that puts the title slide back in at the end of it. So one thing that we want to do is we want to go through and double check to make sure that there are no exclamation point warning signs up here. Make sure that all of these scriptures show up as they should on each slide, that there's no text that's lost, and just break up any long scriptures into reasonable chunks in the presentation. In order to do that, we'll come up to Reflow and look at the Reflow Editor. And over here you can adjust the size of your slide, and you'll want to come in and just break these lines wherever you think they need to be. Now an easy way to break this is to use your Alt or your Option key and hit the return key, and it will add automatically another. And then if you come down here and find Acts 2:6, now you see there's also 3 corresponding Acts 2:6 slides over here. In order to undo that and to put that back how we want it, you can just simply hit the delete or the backspace key, and it will combine those 2 slides, and we can put that there together. And we can actually do the same thing for this one, because I think that fits better on one slide. And that's how we go through and clean up any of the scriptures that need to be adjusted or kind of split apart or put back together. The next step is part of the fun step, where we add in our scripture backgrounds and the title slides. So you see here, this is a title slide from the last service that we had, and this is a scripture slide as well from the last service we had. So there are 4 different versions of this slide that we need to make sure are pulled into the correct place in ProPresenter in order for all of these actions and these macros that we have assigned to work correctly. Now, in order to do that, there will either already be a file in the downloads with that service file in there, or one of the designers in the church will be working on that title slide. So they will either airdrop it to the computer, or it will already be there. If it's already there, we will then pull it in to our themes. So we'll come up to themes, and first off, let's start with the front screens. So we'll come to this front screens theme item here, theme list, and we'll come down to edit. And there's a couple different ways that you can get there as well. You can either do that, or you can come over to theme editor here in this ellipsis button, and then navigate to your front screen scripture slide item. So what we're going to do here is we're going to remove the old background. So we'll come up to this plus icon and use the media item, which will bring up the dialog here that we want to search with. And then we'll go to downloads, and I'll pull in one of the previous titles. We'll use this here. So there will generally be 4 different files in this folder. We'll use this front screen main title copy, whichever one is blank, which doesn't have words on top of it. We will simply click open, and ProPresenter will place it on our presentation for us. So one thing that's important not to forget, that I forget a lot, is we'll want to use this front screen where it's at in this objects panel here. We need to make sure that it's behind these 2, the text box and the reference text box. So in order to do that, I simply click, drag it, and drop it below all these other things, and it positions that item behind the text boxes. If it's in front of it, it won't show up because it's in front and hiding the other 2 items. So for the front screen title, we're going to repeat that. We'll come down. We'll delete out the old item, come to media, and it will pull up to the same file that we were looking at a second ago. And we will find whichever one has the title on it and use open. It'll import the media there. Now next, you can get to the lower thirds is what we're going to do next. We have to make sure those are in there as well. So either you can use this drop down box, and we will find the POG themes, which is right here below it. And what we want to do is we want to find the lower third scripture right here. So it's going to be the same process as it was for the front screens. We'll come down and delete out the old one, the one that's currently in there. And we will look at both of these. All right, that one doesn't have anything on it. We're doing the scripture. So we'll open that, and it will pull in, and it'll do the same thing. It'll pull it in on top of the verse. But you notice the reference is over here, and it's still shown because this item has transparency up here, that this reference is still showing through. If I were to move the item up above it, it would hide it and show the verse text. So we'll let that go, and we will undo that item, and we'll pull that down there below that. Both of those are showing up fine. And we'll repeat this same thing for the title. That one's blank. Use the title, open it there, and there you go. So now all of our title slides are pulling in to where they'll pull in correctly. You see, whenever we click on the title slide, we get what disturbs you. Whenever we click on the scripture blank, we get this here. Now, one thing to note is whenever you've got your scripture slides, you see how it's still pulling in over here like it needs to be. And then the stream lower third is likewise pulling in according to our new setup. So that'll show whatever you pull a slide in as, it'll still show up in our view here. Now it should be, if we go back to the Bible and look at options, when we select this new theme, it'll change the theme down here, and we'll then subsequently change it in our, and we'll copy this to the selected presentation, and then we'll come back out to show. And now you see it has a different background in here. This title fits, and then this background, I messed up. I didn't put, so we've got the title, and then we need to make sure that our sermon scripture macro is on the first line of this. And whenever we pull that in, then it puts it back on there correctly. So that's just something to remember as we go through pulling in scripture slides. The other thing on this lower third, we can probably come into the reflow and use the backspace key to pull this righteousness back up on the same line. So we're getting close to the end of this. What we're going to do next is we need to go through and we need to check operation of every item that we've pulled in. So we want to make sure our pre-roll, want to make sure it's pulling up correctly and going correctly to both the stream and to the front screen. We'll check and make sure of any new slides or anything that we've put in. Delete out any items that don't need to be in there, and ask myself or ask Noah if there is something in there that you don't know about, whether it needs to be in there or not. One thing you can do is to disable the slide in the interim if you're not sure, and it will just go King of Glory. I didn't change the background here, so we'll remove all of that. And then we will make sure that this lyric macro is put back on the front there. So we'll just double check, make sure it's going right there. That's good. Go to this third song. We'll remove this action. We'll remove all of that. Make sure lyrics macro is put on there. Use that, go back to front. That looks good. Then we'll go to sermon, scripture blank, good, title, good, lower third, looking good. And that's set up. And at this point, we're ready for the run through to start. Our goal is to have all of this done and ready to go, sitting and waiting on the worship team to start run through. That way we can go through with them, follow through with them, make any notes of any differences or any changes that the worship leader makes during his run through. Ask him about anything that's different. Pay attention to spellings, pay attention to wordings that are different. One thing that we want to pay attention to as well as we go through the run through and as we are setting up is for extra punctuation that might be in the service. Sometimes there will be items that are to put too many lines on a slide that we want to break up that we didn't notice until run through. Just make a note of any of those things, and after the run through we can go back and change those items. After the run through, we want to make sure that we start the countdown timer for the service. Now this has been done a couple different ways throughout the years. Currently right now we have 3 different timers that are set up for Sunday night, Wednesday night, and Sunday morning. Whichever service it is that you're running lyrics for, we want to select and hit this play button. So for Wednesday night, we'll hit play, and it will count down to the time of the service starting. You see here on Sunday night, it counts down to 6 o'clock. Here on Wednesday night, counts down to 7, and then on Sunday morning, counts down to 10 a.m. So we'll start this timer. starts a timer in the computer. In order for it to show up on the pre-roll, whenever we start it up here, in order for it to show up, we have to add a prop in. We have to select the prop that is going to show it. There are 3 corresponding props that have text boxes that are linked to each of those timers that we talked about a second ago. So we started the Wednesday night, so we'll start this timer. You see how there are different items and neither of them are going. Where this timer shows that there's 3 hours and 6 minutes, this is showing that there is 186 minutes, just because that's how the timer is formatted. Want to have that running and going throughout all of the pre-roll. That brings us up to ready to run the service. Anything that might need to be changed or updated, things are kind of fluid, but we want to make sure, like I said before all this, we want to make sure that we are prepared, that we have a plan in place, simply because it allows us to be more spontaneous during the service. The more prepared we are in the beginning, the more ready to go we are. We're on task with the worship team. We want to be in unity with the worship team because we share the same goal. We share the same intent to create an atmosphere of worship, an atmosphere where God can move in this place that is as distraction-free, an atmosphere that is as distraction-free as possible, and that just flows through the service with the songs and everything else. It's not out of a place of arrogance. It's not out of a place of pride. We do this as worship to God. This is our form of worship, that we want to make a space where people that are hurting, people that are broken, people that are seeking God can come in, feel comfortable, feel engaged, just be able to feel God and feel more open to God. I wanted to make one more comment about being present in the booth. We want to make sure that we are up here and ready to go 10 minutes before service time. That gives us 5 minutes. We might just have downtime up here. We might be sitting, praying or watching or talking back and forth between other members of the sound team. But we want to be up here and be present at 5 minutes before service starts. We have to make sure that we have music going for the stream, and we need to make sure that we have the pre-roll going, and the countdown timer should already be up. But the stream starts at 5 minutes beforehand, so we want to make sure that we have all of those things going and ready. So with all that, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I hope this wasn't too long. If you have any questions, ask me, ask Wesley, ask Noah. You can text me, call me, email me, Slack message me. I thank everybody for their continued learning, their willingness to learn, and to help with this ministry. I appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you guys.